Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tim Sudano, your favorite paranormal investigator. Welcome to the show. Today is our open mic episode. I think it's my first one, and no one's in the chat yet. So let's dive into our today's basic topic. We're starting out with aliens. I'm going to be highlighting the art and some of the history of the experiencer slash. She calls herself ambassador from Earth because of her vast experience. Her name is Elena Danan, and not everybody is into her, and I get that. But her her experience, at least her story, certainly lends a pretty wide variety of. Well, hey, Heidi's on. She made it back from home. Ladies and gentlemen, give your love to Heidi. Send her all the good thoughts. She had a procedure, and she was a little afraid of it. And I told her she'd make it through, and here she is. So, welcome, Heidi. I'm so glad you're here with us. I hope I didn't throw you under the bus with the whole procedure thing. I just wanted to let everyone know that you face some hardships and you're still here, and we're very happy to have you. So again, let's talk about aliens. I'm going to use Elena Danan as a chief example, not the only example. And good, I'm glad, Heidi. But let's take a look at some of the stuff she has put together. I'm going to zoom out of this map a little bit. Now, if you know Elena Danan, she is an archaeologist slash anthropologist. Honestly, I don't remember which. And she is also a very accomplished artist. She's from France, and she has a really remarkable story. And that story is that she was abducted since a very young age, and at one point during her abduction, she was given a procedure where they implanted these abductor aliens implanted something in her head. And sorry, my stupid phone keeps going off. Let me silence that real quick. So during the implantation process, or shortly thereafter, I think there just shortly thereafter, the ship is raided. Okay, now we're in the middle of a space opera, or some sort of adventure. But her claims are this is absolutely true, and she has documented this in a book, which I will pull up shortly. And what happens to her is, we're post of the implant of this thing, this chip in her head, and their ship is boarded. She's rescued by humanoid aliens who take her back to their ship. Whether the other ship is destroyed or not, I don't remember. Honestly, it's been a while since I read the story. But when they stick her on the table, they try to extract this thing, but they can't really do it because it's already integrated into her brain, so much so that she cannot have it removed. So, these humanoid aliens return her to where she's supposed to be, and she has the typical abductee response, not response, but experience. No memory, fleeting glances here and there. And it's almost like she's seeing whispers, ghosts of these different alien species here and there. It's like flashes of memory keep coming in. And eventually, it's a few years after this, and she was a very young girl, apparently, when this happened. I think around 5 or 6. And it's at the age of 9, they start actually talking to her. And they say, listen, beam her up one night. I muted myself. And they say, here's what happened. Here's why we've been keeping tabs on you. No, you're not going crazy. And she was a pretty avid little artist. I mean, in her book, she has her earlier art from that age. And so she's been drawing her whole life. She actually went to university and perfected her craft. And when I show you what I show you, these are her images. So what she meets up with these humanoid aliens throughout the years, and they take her on these little mini trips, and mostly within the solar system, if I'm not mistaken. I think she may leave the solar system a couple, three, four times in her experiences, and every time she comes back, she's allowed to remember more and more and more and more. And so much so that she's able to cobble together these various images. And I will share that with you now. That's one. This is the sector, our sector. Pretty much everything from our perspective. And it's not everything, but it is the bulk of a lot of stuff. So over here is the Lyra system specifically, and they kind of point to it right here. This map is amazing, and it's in parts in her book. This was I think she cobbled this together at a later point, but it disseminates all these various creatures. A lot of them are humanoid, a lot of them are reptilian, a lot of them are grayish. And there's some mixes and matches here and there in between. But I will get to this little map here in a bit. So let me go back to telling you the rest of the stuff and why we're talking about it right now. It occurred to me that I had not seen the tall whites that I had seen, that Charles Hull had seen. And I don't know if it's because they only appear to the Air Force guys or they're interacting with the Air Force more than anything else, which is interesting because I was out of the Air Force when I actually saw these things. But I digress. The one of the and let me show you what I'm talking about. If you're unfamiliar with Charles Hall's tall whites, that's not it. Huh? That's pretty funny. I can't find them now. I meant to set this up earlier and I didn't. So while I look for it, basically, if you take a human and you make their skin alabaster white, and I mean alabaster white. Albino, if you want to go that direction, you can, but it's different. But you give them, like I said, they're a hybrid. They're a hybrid between humanoids and tall grays. And the only tall gray aspect is their height, their excessive height, and their eyes are kind of that larger than normal almond shape, and they're solid black, typically. Or if they're not solid black, their irises and such are super large. And I did not see that representation in Ilana's work, at least not that I could recognize. I found one example that kind of matches. And the chief things I forgot until I saw someone else's rendering of a tall white is the bridge of the nose is ever so slightly wider, which is interesting. So keep that in mind as we look at this next piece of art, which I'll bring up in a second. But going back to Ilana's story, she's allowed to remember more and more and more. She's growing up, and it becomes she later is they take another look at the implant after she hits a certain age. I think it's because she's growing up and don't want to disrupt too many things. Want things to kind of settle down in her body. So I think just past puberty, maybe 16, 17, maybe a little bit later, they actually alter they tried to remove the chip again, like, pull it out. It's like, whoops, I put it back. They do a little testing, and they can't. It's just far too integrated. But they deactivated it from its original operation, which was monitor her. And what they're able to do is futz with the, well, for lack of a better term, circuitry, but it's so finite that, the computer pathways are semi-organic, and according to her, and they're able to change it into a transmitter, two-way communication. With a little bit of focus, she can actually reach out. And that's, for me, where it gets a little bit fantastic, not outside the realm of possibility at all, and but it hits the fantastical part for me right about there in her story. I'm not saying I disbelieve her. What I'm saying is it's, well, it's, again, I don't necessarily disbelieve her. I don't necessarily fully engage in that idea, though. But at the same time, she becomes, as she grows up more and more, she becomes pretty globally aware, surprisingly globally aware. And she continues her studies both in archaeology, or is it anthropology? I still can't lock that down in my brain. But she goes on to meet some of these other creatures that are in an alliance. Then we hear about that. Hear about the Galactic Federation. And we've all heard of the Galactic Federation from other sources outside of Helena Dunham's experience, which is super intriguing to me. So now we have a woman who is potentially locking onto various tidbits of information and compiling her own reality or her own story, or we have an experiencer that has firsthand knowledge of this Galactic Federation and the various peoples within it. And with that, I will share the map. Again, this is just reference material from her book. So I didn't make any of this up. Let me proceed to show that to you. Here's her map. And it's a sector, it's pretty much all the star systems that we can see in, from Earth. So, there's Cephas and Andromeda and Cygnus and Pegasus and all that fun stuff. Ursa Minor, Ursa Major. And I'm going to focus on Ursa Major for just a minute. The interesting thing about Ursa Major very recently is we just received some very interesting signals that may indicate life. And if the reading I did was correct, it's coming from this system. Which is, so essentially, the Big Dipper, essentially. Just outside of it, actually. Not where Gooms Bridge 618 is, not nor Lalande 2185, but it's somewhere over here. Somewhere. Or it's very near it, like about here, if you can see my cursor at all. So they're saying that's about where it's coming from. And I encourage you to fact check everything I'm saying. Please do, because I could be radically wrong. All I know is they mentioned Ursa Major in the stuff, and if I'm wrong, please let me know, because I do want to be correct and I do want to send out correct information. But let's draw back a little bit. So this is our night sky, essentially, globally. We're not going to, each of us sees a sliver of this depending on where we live. But this is our night sky. And you will notice there are clusters here and there. Now, the thing she points out primarily in her book is the light system. Now, according to what she was told in the various Keplers, which is interesting, because we've been looking at Kepler a lot, which is, I'm not Kepler, I'm sorry, the Lyra system quite a bit, near Vega, near K62. And we've been looking at this cluster a lot, and we're finding a lot of exoplanets which is beyond fascinating to me. So there's a yeah, I Heidi asked me an interesting question. Let me put it up. She asked if the Bootes constellation and Arcturus are on the map. I believe they are. We can look for it real quick. So let me close that. But as we get into not only Elena Danon's story, but the basic story of the various alien types out there, we have to kind of take some of this with a grain of salt because none of this is absolutely confirmed. I know what I saw, and I'm going to show you that individual or something very close to that individual. And they're way down here. You'll notice she makes references to some things that are a little more familiar to us. In this case, with the X-Files thing, it's a metamorphic creature that lives somewhere on X1Z in the telescopium area near Corona Australis in the Sagittarius area, which is fascinating. But here we go. There's this gal here, kind of angry looking. The wider nose of the bridge, the slightly almond-shaped eyes. I did not see the eyes on these creatures. The way Carl described them, they were blacked out. I did not see blacked out eyes per se because she had wrapped around sunglasses, the little girl that I saw, as did the mother figure. But they both had that nose. I'll never forget that. Although somehow it got erased from my recall. I'm not saying there's any conspiracy there. I don't think anyone knew I was looking at them. But, so this is the creature that comes closest, but not quite there. This creature comes from an area, I believe, from here, in the Minza area, Volanus, Alpha Menese, that type of stuff. So sometimes you'll see Elena draw the ship type that is most common with the creatures she experienced and that we sometimes experience down here. If you want to look at the Nomo, for example, you'll notice they're aquatic. That could be what we've been seeing. We've been seeing a lot of mermaid references lately. Even in modern history, it could be these creatures, because apparently every single creature on this map in its entirety has visited Earth. Their species has, to one degree or another. Some people are on our side, some are not. I should also mention that this is based on Elena Danon's personal experience, stuff that was relayed to her. Sometimes it's cryptic. She may not always get it right the first time. She has a lot of corrections in her books, actually. And which said, you know what, I said this before in chapter 2, but in like it's a couple chapters later, she says it was cleared up for me later on that this isn't this and this is what, who these people are, and that they're not related to a given, a branch or federation or what have you. And you'll notice these different symbols here as I highlight them with my cursor. The red, the green, and this pinkish one here. Those are apparently, she has a legend over here, with these colors. If you see that, or you see any of these symbols, these are different areas and cultures that are part of the same, federation, alliance, what have you. And so she has a pretty complete map. Now, will say that she has a number of things that are. Let me bring myself back up here. There are a number of creatures. Yeah. Oh, Heidi has talked to me about all kinds of things on the chat right now. But looking at the map of creatures, as she says, it's pretty various, it's pretty wide, yet there are similarities. I notice most of them, not all of them, but most of them are kind of like us, kind of humanoid, kind of basically Like this form, while it's not the most effective form, this form we share, apparently within this sector of the galaxy, is pretty universal, which I find, despite the feelings that some of these creatures have toward us that have been reported as being, such, they have they look like us, and not everyone likes us. Some of us think we're dangerous. We're dangerous animals. We're still in our youth as a species, I guess you could say. Although, I will put it to you, with the recent discoveries underneath the Egyptian and pyramids, and the pyramids in, not Göbekli Tepe. Oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on that name. They found similar structures underneath another pyramid complex like halfway around the world. It's amazing. Getting back to the Booty constellation in Arcturus, I could, if you can narrow that down on the map, is it by Orion? Is it, 'cause I am not that, as much of an astronomy nut as I am, I didn't memorize the various things. So if I do a quick scan, I don't see Arcturus immediately. Nothing stands out. We have Aldebaran, but that's really about it. But again, this is Elena's map and her interpretation taken from her book. So I encourage you to look up her book, and I'll give you the cover to that in just a moment. I see Andromeda. So if you know where Arcturus is, Heidi, please let me know, because I am not immediately seeing it. But if it is mentioned somewhere, chances are it's here. And I'm sorry, I don't know where it is off the top of my head. It is south of the Dipper. Okay, well, let's take a look at that. Let's look at the Big Dipper here. There, I just passed Ursa Major, Leo Minor, Arcturus, Wolf 359. You thought that was in Star Trek, huh, kids? No, that's a real place, and it's not too far from us. I am not seeing Arcturus. If you are, Pollux, Lynx, Leo Minor. How far south? Let's go all the way to the bottom. Maybe I missed it. Well, it's not mentioned on a map, and again, there are a few things that are not mentioned on her map. So let's take, again, you have to take some of this top left. Oh, found it? Top left? My left. Top left, my left. Well, our left, really, because we both look at the same thing. I'll look again. Let's take another look at that. Sorry, folks, I didn't mean to turn this into a top left. Top left Arcturus. Do you see it? I wish you could just jump on here with me. Top left. Booties. I found booties. There we go. So Arcturus can't be too far behind there, right? Okay. I found booties. And there's Arcturus. Wow, good eyes. Fantastic. So they are here, and this, if we follow this line, is roughly what they look like. And if they're in blue, they're on our side. These are names. I don't know if they're necessarily species names or not, but this is apparently what they look like. They got the big heads, and I'll zoom in a little more. They got the big heads, and they wear clothes, a trench coat apparently. That's kind of neat, and they exist from anywhere from the third to the ninth dimension. That's what that indication means. So interesting. We kind of found at least one of them. That's fantastic. Blue, yay! We found them. Heidi and I did it. So Heidi actually had some interesting other things I want to pass along. She has a Google amount of the species that she's heard about and resonates with, and She said, I have seen some of the beings I have been searching for years. You saw them on this map, Heidi? Is that what you're saying? Um, yeah. Hold on, she's interested. She said some interesting things. So I imagine this is through meditation. I don't know, Heidi. Are you an experiencer? I didn't know you were. That's interesting. The Jedi people, or the strange lady with the long limbs, and unless I had a weird walk, that nose, and the facial features are similar. So we may have seen the exact same creature. That's very interesting to me. Fascinating. Um, that's what I've read. Know your own. Okay, yes, she has actually experienced these creatures. That's fantastic. So I imagine live. I'm sorry. You know what? I gotta hide that comment. There we go. I know how to operate my show. I promise. So as we explore this map and we're looking at these various creatures, I'm seeing similarities. We're humanoid. We have a couple insectoids in there, the mantis people. And we have one creature, let me go back to the map again, that is, it's interesting how you take it. There's this creature here, Negugugamak in Nomopo. So you see this goofy looking squiggly creature here? If you've seen the movie Men in Black, hello. I think she put this together before that went out, so maybe they just drew inspiration from this. But the whippy tentacles and the goofy mask and the weird long arms, all part of an encounter suit. And I think this might be the individual's actual arms hanging out here. So if this was an encountered suit, a biological encounter suit, wow, they pull that from their, collective rears when they were putting the movie together. Not Men in Black, I'm sorry, Independence Day. Independence Day. Or did they have some knowledge? We don't know. Those are two. They are blue. Sorry, I'm catching up on Heidi's notes. Okay, yes. So it's interesting. Now, let me also point out something else on the map in just a little bit. I'm going to take you into the nerdy land of Star Trek briefly, and I'm going to talk to you about Gene Roddenberry. Whoops. And Gene Roddenberry apparently was part of a clique of other writer producers also in the sci-fi arena. And at one time they were having was it a seance? Like they tried something new every week in the more spiritual sense, I guess you can call it, or the more fantastical sense, just to see what the hubbub was about. And I think they went to a psychic or a medium, and they started talking about, or the medium started, doing her thing, and she was kind of a mouthpiece for an alien civilization, apparently. And so the writers, being writers and producers and people who ask the basic questions who, what, where, when, why, pardon me, ask those questions. And the response is kind of flippant, to be honest. It's like, you cannot even begin to pronounce our names. But we're, anywhere from 29 to something like 112 light years from your planet, depending on who you're addressing. And wait, who are we addressing? Well, there's 9 of us. I mean, we're just kind of using her as a mouthpiece, this medium. It's like, okay. And so you're out in deep space. Yeah. You probably know where I'm going with this. And that was the basic concept, because it's in his notes somewhere, in a book somewhere. I think maybe either released by him or by his son, where he says, yeah, that's basically the tenant the idea behind naming this space station out there Deep Space Nine, because apparently it was he and his writer buddies were in contact through a medium with 9 representatives in deep space. So, fun little fact there. One of the other interesting things I find about when we get to these different species and who they are, and I reference my Uber boss, Joe, who runs UPRN. Joe is part of ICAR. He founded it. He used to be with MUFON, and then he moved into his own sector of research and reporting. And is, yes, Heidi, wow, big time, interesting stuff. For sure. So they were out there. Nope, hold on. I jumped the track there for a second. Joe is on the Outer Realm tonight. Yeah, definitely watch him. So Joe started this his own thing called ICAR, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it's called, but I mentioned this to him at one point. Maybe I had him live on the show once when this happened. It was just he just kind of blew through the subject a little bit, but I asked him about Elena Danan and what he thought of her interpretation of some of the more nefarious reptilians. And I'll bring this up again because it might be worth taking another look at. If we go up here and we look at this guy right here, I don't know if that's his name or if that's his species name, but there's a classic Draco for you. Classic Draco. The reptilian look, the wings, the tail, all that fun stuff. And what Joe has to say about the reptilians is kind of interesting, mostly based on his reports from the abductees he's interviewed. And over the years, he's had several of these abductees, actually, since they're taken regularly. It's almost like clockwork. Excuse me. And the primary abductors, if you will, are the tall grays, the Dracos, and sometimes the humanoids, but mostly the grays. And so he hit upon something at one point, and he says, let's have our abductees just kind of focus, do a little mantra to themselves every night before they go to sleep. And when they're abducted, they can ask this question and get a response. Because they do reverse hypnosis every time they suspected an abduction. And every time they knew for a fact there was going to be an abduction. So they put the word out, and their network is vast. They have at least something wild, like on the order of anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 abductees on their roster who help them out with this investigation. And so the little mantra to ask this question or ask another question, they keep getting responses. And now we know with relative, I wouldn't say accuracy, but we have a relative general knowledge of how the larger universe works, or at least the larger galaxy. I wouldn't say universe. But it looks like we are really kind of special. That the ancient alien theorists out there, whether you're talking about the TV show or other folks who are less popular, might, if not truly do, have things right, that we were seated here. Now, let's briefly break off from our alien species thing and let's tackle that, because I feel that there's far more to that story than it's being led on, or that we are truly in the know on, because we are finding way older stuff as far as buildings go that are lasting hundreds of thousands of years, made from stone work primarily, but it is laser accurate. It is huge. I mean, monumentally huge. Monolithic, to be completely honest. And and I wouldn't say Stonehenge falls into that. I think that was probably more of a, well, I don't know, potentially more of a human construct. But I think we are looking at the possibility that there was an older human civilization here. Now, we could dive into Atlantis. We could dive into, oh gosh, I want to say Tamaria. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. The one that was in the old Siberia area. Tamarian? Oh, Heidi, maybe you can help me out with that. But there's a knowledge that's coming forth that we had a pretty impressive society prior to our Stone Age existence. So we're talking about something older, and Göbekli Tepe kind of leans into this a little bit as far as dating goes, carbon dating, I should say. That we are, there's a potential that there was a society here, potentially by humanoids. If not, maybe something else. I don't know. Some say giants, a colossal thing of giants, and I don't mean the fallen angel Nephilim thing necessarily, but giant people. I mean, there was that dig in Turkey near Mount Ararat, said to be the grave of Moses. They were digging around in, and they pull out this finger bone, and it's specifically this finger bone right here, but it is this big. So that creature, who has a very similar finger bone to us, was easily 10, 12, maybe even 14 feet tall. So, no. Heidi asked if I meant the Anunnaki. No, I'm referring to later times, but they lived in the Siberian area, I think. And they're finding the bells and the architecture is influenced, old architecture is influenced by their stuff. I think they're called Tumerian. Oh my gosh, that sounds like a Star Trek thing. That's embarrassing. I can't remember what they're called. But suffice it to say, we're dealing with a lot of interesting layers to not only the human history, but the truth about who we are, the truth about where we come from. Because, we could spin this thread out a little bit further. You've all heard from various sources, including a couple of very famous physicists who, and biologists and what have you, that say our circadian rhythm, the human circadian rhythm, the 24-hour period doesn't match. It matches more Mars's orbital path. And that in and of itself is fascinating. So were we the original Martians? And were we dispatched here as an escape? Are we the remnants of a colony that landed here? Seeded? Who knows? That could be the seeding everyone's talking about. That could be that we were escaped Mars somehow. Probably via craft. I mean, it doesn't take that long to get here. And for advances, if the ancient Martian us had our even our current level of technology, and there wasn't anything being repressed or anything like that. We had star drives that could take us places super fast. I'm not saying light speed necessarily, but I am aware of certain programs that do match a faster than light technology, that do, incorporate that type of, like I said, technology. So it's interesting to kind of take that into account if we didn't have any restrictions on this other world, and Earth was close enough, maybe a little more oxygen rich, to take care of us, and maybe a select group, who knows, I don't know if they can evacuate an entire planet. If you look at the surface of Mars, it looks like it had a massive, like the Val Marineris looks like an impact site, wholly gigantic impact site. That's my personal take on it. I worked at NASA for a little bit. You can take that with a grain of salt too, because I do not have a doctorate in astrophysiology or astronomy, astrophysiology or astrophysiology for that matter. But we're going to bring a lot in. If that is the case, if we are the descendants of that Martian humanoid culture, and we were basically knocked back to the proverbial Stone Age, that's not to say we wouldn't retain our knowledge. That may be it may be that we kind of picked up where we left off on Mars, as best we could, and that, again, we're following a really weird thread here. But if you're gonna, if you approach things logically, you can build this idea out. And that's, we're still taking this from a place of, if this was the thing, then that must be the answer. But again, it's a logical progression. So we get here, we start building our society as we knew it. Little things here and there, a base here, a colony there, and it is functional for a while, and it's working. But we're not as powerful as we once were. We're on a new world that is largely still quite wild, and we can implant our technology from our Martian past and make it work here. And who's to say it wouldn't be, if the new radar scans we found under Giza and Angkor Wat, that's the other pyramid, are any indication, we used geodesic, oh gosh, anyway, we're using ground power, basically, what Tesla rediscovered centuries later. If we have that in place, we would need a method of distribution, pyramids, method of generation, pyramids and obelisks, and all that fun stuff. I know I'm spinning out a really wild, very thin theory right now. But if we take some of the cultures, Egyptians, for example, the ancient Maya and Toltec and all those guys, Olmec, we're going way back in Central South America, and even North American stuff, history, we find and have found at some of these locations where the Aztec built up something, it was built over even older stuff. And that goes for most of the cultures in the North American, South American, Central American area. And it was far more expansive. We just found a temple, roughly, kind of the Mayan ilk of building in Alaska. That was a couple, 3-4 years ago. Alaska. They went all the way over there. I mean, that's incredible. And the stuff's ancient. And there's, you could talk about Antarctica at this point and say, okay, maybe, who knows. Tartarian. Aha! I knew it would come to me. Tartarian is the elder empire I'm referring to. And mostly that's still theoretical. They can say, well, we think we have this, that, and the other thing. And they were super advanced. They believed in frequency healing. They put it in their steeples and that helped people out and all that fun stuff. Well, that would seem to be a method to me of having a more advanced understanding and or technology that would come from somewhere else. Whether we were given it from aliens or we were the aliens who handed it down to one degree or another. Or if we are spaced out over this new world in pockets and colonies, we're not as strong. So we kind of are susceptible to invasion. And maybe that's where the whole Anunnaki thing comes in play. This is pure speculation. This is simply what I have in my head as far as building logical steps as to what actually happened. There are ancient writings I have not read. I am not as well versed in things as someone like Zachariah Stitchin, like Billy Carson. I am not that well versed. I have not taken the time or energy to read these and translate these ancient texts. I can't rely on what I see with my own eyes. And I can build this scenario, this Martian scenario, into a feasible theory, but it's not confirmed. Not at all. But if we are talking about a culture that existed with a pretty significant building technology to start with, and I mean laser accurate, I think it's possible. I think it's possible and lends to our more recent discoveries, because the deeper we dig, the less things into the more we have to change the narration of the human history. So take that with a grain of salt. Heidi, how you doing? Let's check in with Heidi. Last thing she said to me was super interesting. That was 40 minutes ago. I hope I still have your attention. Again, if you want to join us, the chat is open. Head on over to, and I'll see if my banner is still up. It is not. Head on over to youtube.com/paranormal _insight streams. That's what it's called. I hope I spelled all that. Okay, so scroll across the banner. I'm adding the banner right now. Here it is. So go there. That's supposed to be paranormal. Let me edit that. There we go. Streams, double checking. Yeah, we're going to save it and we're going to go for it. So go here if you want to join the chat. Heidi gave me big happies. She's very excited by this topic. So let's briefly go back to Elena Danaan. And I want you to take a very, very good look at this really just spacious and this is like 6 pages that were cut together to make this map. And I have to say, I am impressed. I mean, the various creatures on here, I'll show you some of the weirder ones too. You'll see some creatures that are kind of, I mean, these guys aren't exactly that duck-billed guy there and whatever's going on here. We've seen this dude before with the long heads, the Egyptian-like stuff. And I'm not sure if that's a name or a species, but apparently they come from Kabbalah, which is intriguing. But let me show you someone else. Okay, spiky-faced guy with a weird skin condition, kind of looks like a Lopso with a crown of thorns. He's in red, probably a bad guy. The duck-billed guy over here, 50-50 with us. We have a lot of humanoids, a lot of elongated headed people, and then we come over here to these people. Again, it's in French, and my French is horrible. If you know it, go ahead. But apparently, they exist on multiple dimensions across from ours into far higher stuff. And then we're going to come over here. And every time you see these ghostly looking guys, it usually means they're operating on a higher dimension, which is fascinating stuff. And then we have the bird person, which is fascinating. Another bird person, also fascinating. They come from, well, if we follow that thick line, from the Orion area. Mintaka. And I will say near Bellatrix, which is interesting. And Beetlejuice, or Beetle guys, however it is you want to pronounce it. And there's guys with the flashlight eyes that fly around in this. But you guys are intriguing looking. But one thing I want to draw your attention to is that if Deep Space Nine was garnered from a communication through a psychic speaking to alien people, I want you to take this into consideration. See this symbol back here? It's a symbol or a ship, I'm not sure which, but I want you to look at that name, Tal Shiar. Now that, my friends, if you're a Star Trek fan, just set off all kinds of little alarm bells in your head. Because the Tal Shiar in Star Trek world is the Romulan, not special forces, but kind of like the Romulan version of the Gestapo. Which I found super fascinating. So if we found various ideas and species taken from Elena Danon's work used as science fiction stuff, are we dealing with what the term escapes me, but I'm going to create my own. And are we dealing with that a form of programming where, hey, we've seen this before. It was on our favorite sci-fi show, so it's got to be okay. So we've seen it before. I mean, take the Star Wars Cantina. Wow, that's a diversity right there. Take everything in Star Trek. More diversity, including cat people. Not bird people, although they did have that name, but cat people. Fascinating stuff. Interesting things to ponder. And Heidi said, yes, the aliens, the bird people. Yeah, they're fascinating. It's fascinating. And it's interesting they're in that cluster way over there. So let's get back to my happy smiling face. Hi there. And let's maybe think about taking an early break. And we will be back very shortly after these 80 seconds. And then I'll talk about my book. A little bit of self-promotion, but it actually ties into our topic quite nicely. So we'll be back in 80 seconds. See you soon. This is the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 105.3 in the Gulf Coast. UPRN talkradio.com. Esoteric programming at its finest.
Our symbol, the trident, gifted to us by the priests of Troy Xenos centuries ago when one of the first monster hunting teams out of Corinth battled a contingent of Vrykolakas that had infested their temple. After the victory over the monsters, the head priest declared, "You are three lances acting as one, not unlike Poseidon's mighty trident of light." That would become our name, the Trident of Light, for the good we did and still do against the dark evils of this world.
Available at Amazon Books. Follow us on Instagram at paranormal.insight. Stay informed on upcoming shows, ask questions, and see what chilling paranormal stories we're following. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube at paranormal_insight. Click the live tab to see our latest videos. Well, we're back. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the show. Let me post this and share it and read it with you. Heidi said the Galactic Federation is made up of a question mark of star systems or species. Do you know of any specific military or authority, or do you think it's made up of many species? Oh, I see what you're. I think I know what you're asking me. I was a little unclear on that initially. From what I understand, they are, and it's actually spelled out in the map. So, hey, I'll put the map up again. That's always fun. Various individuals may be related to, I can't find the interactive portion. There it is. May be related to each other in general because they kind of look alike and they look like offshoots of one another. Some have adapted higher dimensional existences, others have not. Others have live in strange conditions. Others are wildly different from us, humanoids anyway, and have their own little thing. But if we look at the legend here, blue, and this is again, my French is abysmal, but the blue means in our favor, or at least aware of us. They may have visited us, they may not have. Black means they're neutral when it comes to Earth. They may have visited here, they may not have. And red means they are against us completely and are not necessarily our buddies. So if you run into them walking around on Earth, maybe you should just turn around, run a different way. Now, we should also provide symbols here to denote the different, I guess, major factions that may exist within this blue-black-red dichotomy. So there is that. We have, interestingly, we have the Empire Siakar, which apparently has something to do with the Draconians, if that symbol right here is any indication. Draconian lead is a guess. That's a guess. I don't know. We see the little person in here in the triangle, Council of Sync, which I think is more along the lines of the Ascended people. And there's one version of it right there. Blue guy, blue person, a species. So if you see the ones in the suits, on our side, at least according to Elena Danan. And I have to admit, Elena has put together a very comprehensive, very structured dichotomy. Dichotomy? It's structured when it comes to who's who, what's what, and where they live with us. I'll give you another example. Remember a veiny guy with the flashlight eyes who has a pyramidal ship? And this actually describes a ship that he interacted with some 25, 30 years ago. You see my little cursor right here. Whether he did not describe this alien, but the military base, the deep underground military base he was taken into on a remote island off the coast of Florida, does kind of speak to that being and his vessel. And you will notice that the lettering here is mixed between blue and red, according to Elena Danan. And her sources, it's mixed. Apparently there's two sides that, some say, yeah, the humans are okay. Others say, hang the humans, read between the lines, And then I want you to take a look at this guy, reptilianoid, weird big head. Blue, okay with us. Now, that kind of leads me to my next major point. And that major point is, as with every single individual here on Earth that we know, directly or indirectly, there's a mix. Some people are really good, some people are really bad, and there's all the rest of us living in the gray. So whether you're, the idea that all reptilians are evil, you like the way I put that? Um, um, doesn't necessarily speak to, that everybody's that way. So yes, as Heidi put it just now perfectly, there is a balance in all things. Let's briefly go back to what I was talking about. But we still are. Okay, never mind. That transition doesn't make any sense. So I'm gonna do a little self promotion. That's not it. That's it. That is my first book, second edition of the first book. Timothy James S. Big secret, big let up. It's me. Not really. It's me though. It's available on Amazon if you want to go check it out. I need to come up with a better commercial, and I will in the future. But that book has. I didn't mean to do that with myself. I meant to do that. No, I meant to do that. There we go. This book, along with its follow-up, has to do with a team, 3-person team of monster hunters. Now, the monster hunters here on Earth have a really long history. You heard the story in the commercial about the Bicola Cass. That's a really long word for zombies. I was trying to be clever. I failed. But so I there was actually something akin to that in legends somewhere, where a temple was overrun by zombies and everyone was affected, and these soldiers were sent in to clean them out. And the edict was given by a demigod, if I remember the story correctly. I'm not remembering it absolutely accurately. Well, I pulled that idea and I said, oh, okay. So maybe everybody has this problem. So in the book, I made it everybody's problem. Everybody has a monster issue. Something is coming after the humans. Something just outside of us being the apex. There's these other little things that are looking to take us out and make meals of us and all that fun stuff and terrorize us and keep us down. Well, Athens, ancient Athens, I should say, came up with a solution, and they tested it out because they had their own problems. If you know anything about the Greek pantheon of gods and monsters, it's pretty vast. So it was a lot of fertile ground for me to grab onto as an author and create a story where Athens had had enough of its people being terrorized. And what happens is is this in the book or is this in something else? Because I'm also a screenplay writer. I may put this in the screenplay, but in one scene we see a young priestess coming down from the Acropolis, from the Temple of Athens for Athena. She's coming down the big winding path lit by torches, and she gives one of the one of the Athenian centurions that are guarding the road an apple and say, okay, enjoy. And then she walks off, and suddenly one or both of these, one of these guys is snatched away, and the apple falls to the floor. The other centurion turns around and doesn't see anything, just an apple and a spatter of blood, and he goes to investigate, and suddenly he's snatched away. And there's this uproar behind this priestess. She hears stalking and growling and, horrible monstery growls and sounds, and it's getting pretty scary. And this woman lives at the outside of the Athens proper, closer to the temple, kind of not really in the sticks per se, but it was outskirts of town. She said an older woman beckons her in. Come on in. It'll be safe in here. And what's going on out there? Well, it's sometimes you see monsters out here all the time. It's like, you too? Oh yeah, all the time. And as she walks around the little the young priestess, after offering her some broth to calm her nerves, she says she starts transforming into something akin to werewolf, a lycanthrope, if you prefer, and and just as she's about ready to tear this this poor young gal, this priestess apart, bam! In come these Spartan soldiers, Spartan shields, the helms, the spears, the whole thing, and they bust through the door and they jump through the closed windows, and it's just an expert display of not only soldiering, really. I mean, they dodge attacks, they protect, they pull the door to safety, and finally take this thing out. And when all is said and done, the girl asks, "Who are you?" "Well, we're the Trebus Omnislukes. We are the defenders." And it's on their shield, just like in the picture here. So those are the first three in the story. And they would later go on, as the book tells, to pass this knowledge on to the various city-states of the day, because everyone else was having monster problems, and Athens had come up with a solution. And that solution, chiefly, was a three-man team in every city, in every major metropolitan area. As mankind grew, and as cities and states became more complex, there became a need for another type of team, and that team type were called rovers, and that was a team of anywhere between 6 to 9, still holding within the 3-on-3 count. That sounds a little Tesla-like to you. It was not intentional, I promise you. But having a little bit of military experience under my belt, I'm aware that there are, if you stack an odd number of people in a group, usually under 12, at or under 12, you have probably one of the most effective fighting forces available. Not when it comes to small engagements. So we fast forward several thousand years, and in the present day, we find that the TOL still exists, but now they've fallen through the cracks of history, where everyone at one point knew who the TOL were. They walked proudly down the street. Now they're slipped into a secret society. They still exist. They still are 3 per town, rover groups in between those towns and villages guarding the open lands globally. And that's kind of what the TOL comes into play in the book. And what we learn, without giving too much away, is that there's another element to these monsters that may have something to do with... I can't add it right now. I was trying to be clever. May have something to do with these goofy people we have in the stars. Goofy, I shouldn't say that, because they might be watching. You never know. But all these guys, to one degree or another, have a presence in my story, and including one of the so-called protectors, one of the TOL, which effectively has turned these monster hunters into alien hunters. And we, at one point in the book, in the second book, there are 2 books now. I should probably share a picture of that as well. We discovered that there are several factors that, where you thought they were monsters, they really aren't. They were some sort of alien. Either someone abandoned, crash landed here, or someone who just kind of escaped their society and came here to live, because could blend in because they look human enough, that type of thing. And others do not look human at all. There are all kinds. It really is a Star Wars Cantina type vibe with a lot of attention given to the species we have here on Earth. So the idea is that if we're the dominant species on this planet, let's say squirrels, or okay, I'll take something from the book. Badgers are the dominant species on another planet. Spiders, big tarantula spiders, are dominant species on yet another planet. Our level of intelligence, our level of complexity, building things, not just out of webs, but out of mortar and brick and steel and the rest of it. Becoming spacefaring over the centuries and all that fun stuff. So yeah, there is a lot of alien stuff in TOL. It's something I have slowly eked out into the world over the years. It doesn't have the biggest following in the world, but I do have my fans, which I'm very happy to say is the case. I'm trying to find the book cover I used for book 2. And, okay, that's basically it. Let's see if I can find this here. Oh, well, let me drag it over. Hey, like it. Nope. Okay, hold on. I gotta put this somewhere. Yeah, that's basically it. So, this idea that we have a cornucopia of species and peoples out there, including reptilians, including whatever great aliens are. Some say they're from our past. Some say they're from our. I'm not. Sorry. They're not from our past. They are our future selves. And we kind of get into a bone of contention. That's kind of what I want to lock in on right now, real quick. Here's what book 2 looks like. Yay, there you go, book 2. But if we go back to the Elaine Danan story, we get an interesting telling that if we are, if everything she has put forth is in fact, hey, it's gone. Did I close it? If we have in fact these various species out there, what's to say that they don't lay claim to Earth? So there's a story that has been perpetrated throughout sci-fi for decades. You may remember, not Space Above and Beyond. Was that it? Might be Space Above and Beyond. It was a one-season show. Basically, it was set about 100 years in our future. And this is in the 90s, so the math there. And we were at war with a spacefaring species that violently wanted to come back to Earth. And this species, and spoilers, I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil it for you because I need to get to our point here. That species was reptilian because they were here first. And it kind of made sense. And they actually go into this in like the last 1 or 2 episodes of the series where they say, we were here first. We were here when the air was richer with oxygen. We were here when you guys were barely living in caves. You're still swinging around the trees when we left. So, and that, if you think about it, you have a species of largely reptilian creatures that we're aware of. There are probably millions too, even back in the dinosaur days. And we're talking about epochs, millions of years between, Cretaceous and Jurassic and all that fun stuff and everything in between and before. And it's hard to imagine that One species didn't stick. Now, one species didn't progress forward to a point to where they were using stone tools at first, woodworking, then metalworking, then more complex buildings, more complex methods of travel, dialogue, painting, not painting, but communication, writing, music, spaceships. Having a sense of adventure enough to realize that the world that they had enjoyed was changing over the millennia to a degree to where they could no longer sustain themselves. It was getting too cold. It was getting less oxygen rich. And this is the approach of the Major Ice Age that I'm talking about. Okay, we're dealing with the evolving of the. Thank you, Heidi. She likes my covers. We're dealing with the evolution. There's the word I wanted to use, of mammalian creatures that could far easier adapt to the cold than these more advanced beings. Like us humans, we tamed and or adapted nature to our needs. We built canals for the rivers that flood our farmlands. We built aquifers to move water from the mountains into the cities. But we could not manipulate to a degree. Maybe now that is no longer an issue, but weather. I mean, the dominant flow of ice and all that fun stuff. Glaciers forming and encroaching on your land, mile by mile, a little more each year. So you have to leave. It's a matter of survival. If you have the technology and you have the society stable enough, you're going to leave. Big lifeboat, off it goes. And who knows how long you have to stay out there. Ice ages last epochs, millions of years sometimes. Hundreds of thousands, certainly, or they can. There are many ice ages that only last maybe a few hundred, but that wasn't the case in the first big one, or the second. The third was a little bit smaller, and then there was the mini ice age that happened only, something like 15 to 20,000 years ago. And I may be wrong about that, the timeline, but it's something in that realm. So the story goes, these people left. These reptilian type people left. And when they finally return, when the Earth is at a point, at least believed to be at a point, where they inhabit it again, they find a bunch of simians and hominids, us, run around like we own place. The guys were swinging through trees when they left to build a surprisingly viable society. Again, we're talking about a science fiction show. But that science fiction show that was the first one to my knowledge that, and again, I think it was called Space Above and Beyond, that took that into account. Now, they weren't the first ones to use it. A few years later, something on the order of like 25 years later, if I did my math correct in my head, probably wasn't, we have a very famous show called Star Trek Voyager. And they run into a species called, I can't remember, Vox, I think. I could be wrong about that. And they are reptilian. Moreover, we discover these two doctors who are reptilian. They're speaking in this clicky kind of language that we hear lizards today go back and forth on. Well, theirs is really clicky, going back and forth. And eventually they transitioned to English so we can understand what they're saying. And we discover that these two doctors, these two explorers, are something on the order of anthropologists, and they discovered the remains of a creature on a planet that they had never seen before. Not really. They'd never. Well, no, yeah, they'd never seen it before. Not quite. Not like what they're discovering. And it's a Starfleet officer. The remains of a Starfleet officer. And when they do a DNA check, they realize that they have most of the same DNA in common, which is unheard of for them because they don't match anything in their area. Remember that if you recall the story of Voyager, the ship gets shifted to another quadrant of the galaxy, something like on the order of 65,000 light years away. And these professors say, we got to figure out what's going on with these guys. I think we can, talk to, we talked to some other planets in the area. If they had problems here, maybe they went to this station or they went to that station. So they follow, essentially pick up on Voyager's trail and catch up to them. Their technology is super advanced. So they have a method of propulsion that's even faster than what Starfleet's is. And they catch up to them. They kidnap Chakotay, if I remember. And Chakotay, being something of an anthropologist himself, realizes that, oh my gosh, you're not looking for another species here in the Delta Quadrant. You're looking for us. We're from way over here. Well, that doesn't match our records, the doctors say. I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, you're looking for us. And we come from way over here on Earth. Now, prior to this capture, it's kind of an... They captured Chakotay, and then, the reptilians captured Chakotay, and Voyager captures one of the reptilians. And analyzing his DNA, they realize the same thing. And so they go to the holodeck and they build the character out, virtually. And they say, yeah, but he looks like, okay, run a comparison with our historical database on every piece of DNA of every creature we've ever had in history. What does it most match? And it comes up with a dinosaur. A duck-billed dinosaur, if I remember correctly. Its proper name escapes me. But there you have it. And again, we have the story of a reptilian species that left Earth. And they weren't looking to return to Earth necessarily, but they were certainly looking to see where they came from. And in that particular story, they had a hard time believing they didn't come from reptilians. And why weren't reptilians still there? It's like, well, we don't know the story on that. So Space Above and Beyond kind of cover that a little bit more deeply. Now, we have three in my lexicon of stories here. The third one is everyone's other favorite sci-fi. I shouldn't say that, but it's Doctor Who. This is during the David Tennant years. And we happen upon, that species name escapes me as well. A reptilian society, mostly in stasis. And this particular reptilian is a lady, female, and she is living in the Elizabethan. Oh gosh, yeah, Elizabethan. Whenever Charles Dickens was, I think it was Elizabethan. I could be wrong about that. Look that up. I'm not too sure. It'd be a fun search. Anyway, also reptilian, also from Earth's distant past. Most of these people, her people, are in stasis, but the rest took off. So they left a minor colony on Earth in stasis, but the rest took off to parts unknown. And it's the third instance I'm aware of where they say the reptilians were here first. Developed things because they had billions of years to do it, didn't they? At least 1 or 2 billion years to come up with a level of technology that would make them starfaring. It has its possibility. It has its possibilities. So, with regard to Doctor Who, it's I'm an alien too, and they share that, and it's kind of fun. Anyway, going back to my book, I kind of took that. I didn't really follow that premise per se because we have 3 different examples in our visual fiction, at least 3 different examples in our visual fiction that kind of reports to that. And I kind of touched on it a little bit, but I decided to take a different band. That's where I made every other species on Earth that are minor species, like lizards. There are reptilian species, but they're a little more. They stay dinosaur-like in there because they're just the most effective way to do it. And they're part of the coalition. They're in league with a badger species and an octopus species and a Sasquatch type species, actually. And all 4 of them from the same world. That's the only thing I can give away. So, but yeah, there's a spider species and a badger species, and there's a aquatic species. There's all kinds of fun things. I really had a lot of fun building the complement of alien creatures that exist within the universe of the books of TOL. But it was definitely a passion for me to do. It was a lot of fun. And that's not to say that's not the case in reality, in our potential reality. Elena Danan, in her experience, tends to steer. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird to me. I mean, not that it is weird, but it is strange that there aren't more species, like a frog species, for example, or whatever. And maybe some species are from that. Like we have an insectoid thing in her lexicon, not lexicon, but in her map of various creatures. So it would be. I would think there would be other things out there. That's all. That would be my instinct. Maybe we haven't reached far enough out, because we're only dealing with a species map that. That goes in our sector. So basically, if you want to take Star Trek term, our Alpha Quadrant, for lack of a better term. Yeah, just another insect. Yeah, there are a lot. That's what she said. Now, that's interesting. See, that's another little quirk, we'll call it. There's no mantis. I mean, there is a mantis species in her thing, but there's no, excuse me. There's no, how do I put this? There's no ant people. And we have gads of paintings regarding ant people. And not just here in the U.S. They're in Australia. They're in South America and Central America. Mexico area. I mean, most of the South American continent. And the Central American. Sorry. I should say, well, Hispanic is wrong because that's not correct. Everything south of Texas, pretty much Mexico, Central America, South America, they have these paintings of these people with their things, including the Native Americans here in the U.S. I mean, but there's no depiction of them in her map, which I I find that interesting. If there's anything I locked onto, it was that it was missing. So let's, we'll delve into her thing right now. Actually, nope, that's my book. Sorry, having issues with the thingy. Yep, that's me. Adding to the stage. Okay, removing from the stage. Adding to the stage. There it is. Okay. But yeah, if you look around here, I did not see. I see the mantis guys here, the various species of mantis guys. I see this weird spidery dude from Independence Day, but that resembles Independence Day, I should say. But I do not see any ant people. I see the avians here and here. Okay. No ant people, which is interesting. So that they, and if you tune into the occasional Gaia report, which I've only seen clips of, I'll be completely honest with you. I do, they mention the ant people like all the time, and now there's this guy. I wouldn't call him an ant person, but he is quasi insectoid like with his structure here, Forcus aca, whatever he's called. But largely, I mean, I would consider that insectoid, would you? I wouldn't. Largely, they're humanoids, or human-like, sapienoids, or hominoids, or however did you want to put it. A head, two arms, two legs, basically. Pretty much across the globe, with the exception of this guy, and the other ones we showed up here. Oh yeah, this little guy. So, where's the ant people? I mean, there's this person. Maybe that's some weird. I mean, that doesn't look like something insectoid to me. I don't know. Perhaps I'm going off on a weird tangent. But there is something to be said for looking at everybody, various interpretations. Again, this is one individual's interpretation of what she has either witnessed or had reported to her, I guess, directly via her visits / abductions over the course of her life. I believe she has a YouTube channel still where she gives weekly reports on what's going on, not only here on Earth, but how the aliens are perceiving what's going on here on Earth. There's, and Elaine is not the only person. There's the Bashar channeler, who is Alan. Oh, I'm skipping his name. It left my mind, but he channels this creature named Bashar. I don't know where Bashar is supposed to be from, but he is of the ilk of the notion. This Bashar. Thank you, Daryl Anka. It wasn't Alan at all. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Heidi. Daryl Anka. He channels Bashar. And Bashar says that the Greys we're experiencing are us from the future. I have a minor problem with that because, and I will cite my case, in the Rendlesham case, that is a UFO buzzed a nuclear facility at Rendlesham Forest, or near Rendlesham Forest, U.S. facility in England. Back in the, thank you for the thumbs up there, back in 80s or 90s, and maybe earlier, and it kept happening overnight. Well, one of the guys, and under regression, hypnosis, tells an interesting story. He says, well, me and my patrol partner, we see this craft, and he hangs back, but I go up and I touch it, and I walk around the other side of it, and next thing I know, I'm inside this ship, but he can't really pick up on what's going on. Now, the ship itself wasn't that big. In fact, there was a recent thing on Instagram, and I wish I'd pulled it up, where it showed this smaller craft that was, I call them time kites, because they're kind of kite shaped, black, but they're a little semi-pyramidal along the horizontal axis, so it peaks up a little bit on both sides. But they seem to be seen throughout history, and the ship type never changes, and they're not that big. Well, someone ran into one, or someone AI one into being. I'm not sure which. Yeah, it's getting pretty good this year, these days. But he's somehow transported into this ship. Now, it's kind of got a TARDIS effect, if that's the case, because the ship Rendlesham time kite wasn't that big either. It was maybe 5, 6 feet long and maybe 5 feet wide, and kind of shaped like, the pyramidal, like you fly a kite, but the tip was the nose, a longer end was the nose. But anyway, so he's in there, and these little lights are buzzing around him, like fairy lights almost, or fireflies or something, and they're buzzing around him. He does this, and they kind of all line up, and they start talking to him, and they say the usual things you might expect or have heard before. It's like, be calm, you're safe, we won't hurt you. And he realizes he's hearing it in his head, not in his ears. They're not speaking. This is apparently a mechanized version of telepathy. Wow, that's a cool technology if you think about it. But they say, we're not here to hurt you. Everything's going to be okay. We're just making sure everything stays the same in the past. And he questions that and says, what, in the past? And he says, oh yeah, we're from your future. We're just making sure everything's okay. Okay. Yeah, we're okay. That's pretty much where his memory ends. And suddenly his buddy finds him again. And he's way over, like, a ways from this ship. And his buddy goes over to retrieve him. And when he looks back, the ship is gone. Although it had stanchions it landed on, and those left imprints on the ground, a little bit of radioactivity and stuff like that. But when he relayed that story, for me, it gave me hope. It gave me a little bit of hope that, okay, we're looking out for ourselves. We're sending these weird time kites back. Again, the name is my expansion, my personal thing. It's not what it's really called, I'm sure. Although they may be watching this podcast and say, that's a great name for that thing. Well, that's what we'll use. Who knows? Merry Christmas. It's yours. Yeah. Sorry, Heidi wrote something about telepathy. I was just reading it. In fact, let's share that real quick. Let's take a quick break from the story. Telepathy is something I've been working on for years. My granddaughter recently started telling me, I told you in my mind to your mind. So I guess her granddaughter was practicing telepathy. That's pretty interesting. I've had one truly telepathic experience in my life. Actual verbal communication, mental communication from a very good friend of mine. And my experiences with most of this stuff is blasé. It's really just everyday mundane stuff that just happens to go kind of weird, or be delivered to me as an experience in a really weird fashion. In this instance, I'm driving my friend to her college courses, and she's doing night school. I get off work, I drive her to school, yada yada. Anyway, and this monstrous truck, and I mean good old-fashioned Bigfoot monster truck style, truck pulls up next to us, and all we can see is tires. And we're both just kind of looking at it. And I look back because I'm waiting for the light to turn. And she says, "Gosh, that thing's gigantic." And I said, "Yeah, I know." She looks at me and she's like, "I have something weird crawling up my ears or something." I don't know. She gives me this bizarre look. And I go, "What?" She said, "Well, why'd you say that?" I said, "Well, you said the thing was gigantic." She says, "Tim, I didn't say a thing." I said, "Dude, I heard you say it. Don't say you didn't say it. Are you trying to freak me out? What's going on?" And she says, "Tim, I thought that, but I didn't say it." I said, we went back and forth on this for a bit. And I, come on, really? Really? You're messing with me, right? No, dude, I've never been able to do that except for one other person. I said, "Wait, who?" "My brother," she says. And her brother had passed at that point. He'd been gone for a while. And I remember specifically when she had communicated that to me. It was unintentional, by the way. She just thought it and I received it. I remember this rattling, this buzzing, almost like I had a wasp or a bee or something stuck under my skin right at the back of your head. And that little protrusion of the skull from the neck into the skull, where the skull protrudes a little bit just above the, what is that, the T1? No, C1, just above the C1. The skull ramps out a little bit. There's this little tip there. That's where I felt it buzzing, like physically buzzing. And someone later on would say, "Well, that may have been your pineal gland reacting to the whole thing." It's like, really? That's where telepathy comes into place. And this person said, "Oh, in part." Cool. Neat. That was a really weird sensation. And it was bizarre. But personally, telepathic experience, we actually tried on the rest of the drive to talk to each other. Never happened. So I imagine it was just a matter of being comfortable enough with one another that I let her in, or she projected strongly enough that I heard her in my head. But it was a fascinating experience, to say the least. And I don't know the correlation of the pineal gland, Heidi says. The pineal gland is supposed to be this super gland that we have. Very cool, thank you, Heidi. That we have in our brain, and it is responsible for a few things in our function, but it can become, well, the term we hear is calcified, but that isn't exactly what happens. I mean, it is to a degree, but it can be, lessened over the years as we age. And there's a ways, and it also helps with our higher perceptions as far as things like telepathy and, yeah, dormant abilities. Yeah, she just mentioned that. Yeah. So it actually helps lend to act as an antenna for these different abilities. That's the explanation out there. But that is, if I'm gonna locate that in my brain and have it extend out and make it so I can feel it on my, in my skull, I would say that is what I was feeling, kind of vibrating. And apparently it does. It vibrates a little bit anyway, which is interesting. But it also, it's like a cousin to the pituitary gland, and it kind of helps regulate certain functions in the body as well. I think it has something to do with autonomic systems, but I could be wrong about that. I have been to years since I've been in biology class, but so take what I said about it with a grain of salt. But it is also supposed to lend to our higher functions a little bit. When it comes to pulling the thread back, going back to our main topic of alien species and the different species that are out there, what's missing from certain reports. as is the case with Elena Danon's map, extensive as it is and comprehensive as it is, we're missing the ant people. We're missing a couple other people, and I just blanked out on what they were. Oh, I found someone that resembles them. They have the wider nose, but I don't see the tall whites represented the way Carl, his name escapes me too, and I experienced live, in person. So I don't know. You kind of have to take everyone's experiences and build your own map, so to speak, which is a bit convoluted and really heavy and kind of hard to take on. But at the same time, you have other people like Daryl Anka, who has regular communication with a very verbose alien. I like the way he talks with his head a lot. It's always a lot of fun to watch him. He kind of reminds me of Stella Adler. If you know anything about acting and acting classes and stuff like that, Stella Adler was a student of Stanislavski. Stanislavski was all about the method and finding the truth in acting, the truth in portrayal, making each character an actor portrays a part of their own personality and injecting their own experiences into those characters. So everything could be more honest on stage, could be perceived as real, could make the audience believe that that actor is not an actor, but is actually that character. So, Heidi made an interesting thing. But Stella Adler had this funny thing of grabbing. She had this big head of woolly gray hair, and it was longish, but it was a big mop, And she always used to grab it and just kind of tear at it as this is not how we do things in theater. And she'd get really mad and animated about it and try and pull her own hair out in the process. It was really funny to look back at it, because it's like, why is anyone taking with the blonde hair? Interesting. Sorry, Heidi said something. I was looking. I'll get to that in a second. But that's what Daryl's Bashar always reminds me of. He gets very animated with his head, which I find kind of interesting. Yeah, we kind of, Heidi made an interesting point. She was being funny, and she says, "Yeah, we don't have the cone heads out there, do we? But we kind of do. They kind of resemble the I pointed them out initially. Let me see if I can find them in the map here. I think they're up here. Yeah, there we go. That's kind of a cone dude right there. And notice the odd Egyptian type garb. I find that interesting too. So this could be the basis for all the pharaohs. And they're from Capella, near Perseus, which is interesting. Just above Orion. And I think I've told my story about Orion 1,000 times, so I won't bore you again. But sorry, let me get myself back up here. So, excuse me. But yeah, we don't have a complete map, I guess is what I'm getting to, and I think we need one. And California case that mentions it. Hold on, Heidi made an interesting note. Capella and Andromeda. That's fascinating. Of course, and don't worry about interrupting. That's fine. I still got 10 minutes to fill. Capella and Andromeda apparently very close to Earth. In its comparison, years prior, the Chili Peppers came out with Californication that mentions it. Well done. I did not know that. That's excellent piece of information. That's very, very intriguing. And I think we're always finding exoplanets, especially in the Capellas area near Lyra, which is the one of the chief focuses of Elena Danon's, I can't say her name now, Elena Danon's focus is on that area because apparently that's where a lot of humans, us hominids, originated. If you're going to follow the seeding thing. But you know what? I still go back to Mars. My contention is that perhaps that was a colony too, but I think Mars was our original home. I mean, to build our circadian rhythm around the fourth planet in our solar system and still have it affect us today after how many ever thousands of years ago it was that we moved here, migrated here. Who knows? Who knows? Things to ponder. So perhaps we did come from life. Originally settled on Mars because it was more Earth-like, and worked for us. And Earth just happened to be a nice twin to Mars, and back in the day, way back in the day, and when tragedy struck, we had a contingency in place. So there's a lot of missing steps to our history, where we came from. Does Zachariah Stitchin from Zachariah Stitchin to Billy Carson have everything correct? Maybe. Maybe not. Most of those stories, I will inform you, are told from the perspective of the writer. That is to say, the authors of those scrolls, which is to say, from what I gather, these outsiders, the Anunnaki, the would-be gods who came from the stars, who stayed and potentially ruled over us for eons, up until very recently, who gave us all kinds of interesting tools and technologies, and maybe we were pushed back enough in our own evolution after the whole Mars thing because we were conquered by these people, not necessarily seeded by these people. It's something to consider. And that's all it is, a consideration. Yeah. Heidi mentions something interesting. We've explored this to a degree that there are similar structures on Mars as there are here on Earth, the pyramids. And then there's the face of Mars, which, I don't know, depending on how you look at it, and what images you look at even, that, it would be it is an interesting correlation. I mean, the pyramids on Mars are unmistakable in my personal estimation. And yes, I worked at NASA. No, I'm not a professor there or a doctor there. None of that. Absolutely. I'm just a super curious and mildly educated individual who put two and two together and say, hey, that does not equal 4. It equals 20. And I want to know what the rest of those integers are that complete that formula. That's God, I got lost in that metaphor so fast. Sorry about that. But, yeah. Maybe you can tell me what you think. Go ahead and put it in the comments on the YouTube. Tell me where we came from. Where do you believe we came from? Because I think the story is far more complex than anyone has really put together. Yeah. And a final thought. In general, the main contactees, the humanoids of Elena Danan, the one she's in touch with, she's humanoids, the Palladians, if I want to give them a name. I'm not sure I even said that correctly. Mark the reptilians as the bad guys. Now, not all the reptilians, even on Elena's map, are the bad guys. Joe, our manager, our boss here at UPRN, and leader of ICAR, and his major, all of his experience and research and all the rest of it would say that the reptilians are our friends. They gave us the reptilian mind to think for ourselves, to rebel against our oppressors way, way back then. We're talking Anunnaki days. So I put it to you, friends of Paranormal Insight and me, where do we come from? Does religion and religious texts hold all the answers for you? Do you really think that all the pieces of the puzzle are there? Are they being kept from us, said pieces, said missing pieces? Are they being kept from us for a reason? Are they being kept from us for personal reasons? Possibly. Are they being kept from us because we don't want to know? We have bigger problems in the more immediate days here on Earth. Across the globe, we're all facing way different things. You probably took 10, 20, 32 hours, minutes versus up to 2 hours listening to me pontificate and go on about alien species and their would-be agenda. What do you think is really going on? Heidi has a thought. We'll share it. She says, one thought I have had was that the Bible was translated by man, which with their own each with their own individual perception. That's interesting. It's a very interesting thing to say, because we all hear the story about the great Mysia, the council at Mysia who put this book together. The Bible I'm talking about. Prior to that, there was the Torah, which has a lot of history behind it already. So, did mankind simply interpret stories? By and large, it was written 300 years after Christ walked the earth. That's a long time. That's a lot of interpretation left to, interpret. But I leave it to you to answer those questions for yourself and do your own research. And don't take everything I say as would-be gospel, because it isn't. It's just one man's opinion. That's it for me, ladies and gentlemen. My time is up. Thank you so much to Heidi for being on the show with me. And for those of you watching, listening, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Tim Sudano. This is Paranormal Insight. You have a fantastic rest of the week. If you have a paranormal experience that you would like to discuss on the show, please email us at paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com. That's paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com.